He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten me. He simply smiled and said one quiet sentence. The kind of sentence a man only says when he thinks he's already won. A moment later, that confidence drained from his face. His lawyer went silent. I'd waited years for that reaction. But I'm starting in the middle. To understand why I walked away with nothing. And why that was exactly the point. You need to know what kind of marriage came before the divorce. What I saw next changed everything. The man who told me to leave my husband wasn't a friend. He wasn't family. He wasn't even someone I trusted. He was a cardiologist. Mid-50s. Calm voice. Steel gray hair. A name stitched into his white coat, Dr. Alan Mercer. I had come in for chest pain. Tightness. Shortness of breath. The kind of symptoms women are taught to downplay. He closed the door behind him. Slowly. Then he looked straight at me and said, "You need to leave your husband today." No explanation. No hesitation. I laughed. Actually laughed. A short, nervous sound. "I think you're confusing stress with." "No," he interrupted. Still calm. "I'm not." He pulled a folder from under his desk. Thicker than it should have been for a routine exam. "You are not safe at home," he said. "And if you go back tonight, there's a real chance you won't be alive in 6 months." I felt my pulse in my throat. Doctors don't talk like that. What I saw next changed everything. I'm 34 years old. At the time, I worked as a senior project coordinator for a mid-sized logistics firm in Denver. Not glamorous. Stable. Predictable. My husband, Mark, was 41. Corporate attorney. Real estate law. The kind of man people described as solid. Dependable. Respected. We'd been married 9 years. From the outside, our life looked clean and complete. A renovated townhome in Cherry Creek. 2 cars. Annual vacations. Joint savings. No kids yet, by mutual choice. People envied us. They told me I was lucky. And I believed them. For a long time. Mark proposed on a cliff in Big Sur. He cried. Real tears. He used to bring me coffee every morning. Memorized how I liked my eggs. When my mother got sick, he handled the insurance calls without being asked. That's the man I married. That's why the warning didn't make sense. The first strange thing happened 2 years before the divorce. I noticed small discrepancies in our finances. Nothing dramatic. Just, off. A credit card I didn't remember opening. A line of credit against the house I hadn't signed for, or so I thought. When I asked Mark, he smiled. That same easy smile. "You worry too much," he said. "I handle the money." Remember? I did remember. I let him. He was a lawyer. I trusted him. The second thing was subtler. People started treating me differently. Our neighbor, Diane, stopped inviting me over when Mark wasn't home. A colleague once asked, half joking, "So, everything okay with you?" Like, really okay? When I pressed her, she waved it off. Just office gossip. You know how people talk. Mark said the same thing. "You're imagining it," he told me one night. "You've been emotional lately." Gaslighting is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It just makes you doubt your own memory. Then came the health issues. Panic attacks. Heart palpitations. Insomnia so bad I started hallucinating sounds. Mark insisted I see doctors. He drove me. Sat beside me. Held my hand. He answered questions for me when I hesitated. "He's very supportive," one nurse said, smiling at him. Mark squeezed my fingers tighter. At home, he started suggesting changes. "You shouldn't drink wine anymore. You should quit your job for a bit. Let me manage your meds." When I resisted, his tone shifted. Just slightly. "Why are you fighting me? I'm trying to help." "You're not thinking clearly." I started writing things down. Dates. Conversations. Feelings. I didn't know why. I just felt like I needed proof of myself. The day everything cracked open wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. Mark told me he wanted a divorce over dinner. No fight. No affair confession. Just, done. I think we've grown apart, he said. And I want this to be clean. He slid a folder across the table. I don't want anything from you, he added. You can keep your things. I'll keep mine. Then he leaned back and said something that chilled me. Let's not drag this out. 2 weeks later, my attorney called me in for an emergency meeting. She didn't offer coffee. She locked the door. And then she said the sentence that changed how I saw my entire marriage. Your husband planned this for over a year. I couldn't breathe. She opened a file. Then another. Bank transfers. Insurance policies. Medical records I had never seen. And at the very bottom. A document with my name on it. A document I had never signed. That was the moment I realized something far worse than betrayal was happening. And that if I didn't stop being afraid, I wouldn't survive it. If this story shocked you, hit like and subscribe. Because this is only the beginning. That my attorney's name was Rachel Klein. Late 30s. Sharp jaw. Sharper eyes. She had spent 12 years dismantling men like my husband. And yet, when she looked at me that afternoon, there was something close to fear in her expression. Before I say anything else, she said, lowering her voice, I need you to promise me one thing. I nodded. My hands were shaking. You will not confront him. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not ever. You will act normal. Do you understand? I swallowed. Why? Rachel slid a single page toward me. It was a life insurance policy. My name was listed as the insured. The payout, $2.4 million. The beneficiary, Mark Reynolds. My husband. The policy had been taken out 14 months earlier. I stared at the paper until the words stopped making sense. I never signed this, I whispered. Rachel didn't respond immediately. She just flipped to the next page. A scanned signature. Mine. Perfect. Too perfect. That's not, my voice cracked. That's not how I sign my name. I know, she said. I had a handwriting expert look at it this morning. My chest tightened. This policy wasn't the only one, Rachel continued. There are 3 more. Smaller amounts. Different providers. Same beneficiary. I felt sick. And there's more, she said. Your medical records. She opened another folder. Tests I'd never seen. Diagnoses I'd never been told about. Cardiac risk, I read out loud. Severe anxiety disorder. Psychosomatic episodes. What? I shook my head. No one told me this. Rachel leaned back. Your husband attended several of your appointments alone, she said. He requested copies of your records. In some cases, he authorized treatment changes on your behalf. That's illegal. Yes, she said. It is. I pressed my palms into my eyes. So what is this? I asked. Insurance fraud? Rachel hesitated. No, she said quietly. This looks like groundwork. For what? She met my gaze. For a death that wouldn't raise questions. I didn't go home that night. Rachel insisted I stay with a friend Mark didn't know well. I told him I was working late. He replied with a thumbs up emoji. That should have scared me more than anything. At 2:13 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You don't look well lately. Take care of yourself. No name. No explanation. I didn't reply. The next morning, I went to my cardiology appointment alone for the first time. Dr. Mercer didn't smile when he saw me. You didn't bring your husband today, he said. No, I replied. I won't be anymore. He nodded once. As if confirming something. Then he closed the door. What I'm about to tell you, he said, is not in your chart. And it won't be. He pulled up my test results on the screen. Your heart is fine, he said. Your symptoms are real, but they're not cardiac. I let out a shaky breath. Then why? Because someone has been adjusting your medication, he said. I froze. These dosages, he continued, pointing at the screen, are inconsistent. Sometimes too high. Sometimes abruptly stopped. That can cause panic attacks, I said. Yes, he replied. And worse. I thought of the wine Mark had told me to stop drinking. The pills he insisted on managing. Who authorized the changes? I asked. Dr. Mercer's jaw tightened. Your husband, he said. Using a power of attorney I did not realize was falsified. My ears rang. I reported it, he added. Quietly. But you need to understand something. He leaned closer. From the outside, it looks like a fragile woman with a history of anxiety. On medication. Under stress from a divorce. I couldn't breathe. If something happened to you, he said, it would look natural. That was when he told me to leave my husband. Rachel moved fast. She filed for a forensic audit of our finances. She requested subpoenas. She contacted an investigator she trusted. His name was Luis Moreno. Former fraud division. Private now. He met me in a parking garage downtown. Neutral territory. Your husband's careful, he said. But he's not as smart as he thinks. Luis showed me transaction logs. Payments to a shell company in Nevada. Monthly transfers of $4,800. The company was registered to a woman named Elaine Parker. Mark's legal assistant. She's not just an assistant, Luis said. She's been doing his dirty work for years. My stomach twisted. And this? Luis added, pulling up another file. A text message thread. Make sure the dosage change goes through this month. She's asking questions. We need the timeline to stay on track. I felt cold. What timeline? I whispered. Luis didn't answer immediately. Instead, he showed me a calendar entry from Mark's phone backup. A date circled in red. October 14th. The note attached made my blood run cold. All resolved. That date was 3 weeks away. I started sleeping with my phone recording audio at night. I pretended nothing had changed. I smiled at Mark. I packed lunches. I laughed at his jokes. He watched me carefully. Too carefully. One night, I woke up to the sound of him standing over the bed. Just standing. Can't sleep, he asked softly. No, I said, forcing my voice steady. You? He smiled. That same calm smile. Try to relax, he said. Everything's going to be over soon. After he left the room, I turned off the recording. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the phone. That was when fear turned into something else. Cold. Focused. Controlled. That's when I stopped being afraid. Rachel laid out the plan. We let him think he's winning, she said. The divorce. The assets. Everything. You want me to give him what he wants? Yes, she said. Because the moment he believes there's no risk, he'll make mistakes. And the insurance? I asked. Rachel's eyes hardened. He can't collect if he's exposed, she said. And he can't expose himself without witnesses. The hearing was scheduled for late September. Public. Recorded. Mark wanted it fast. He told everyone I was unstable. That I didn't want to fight. I played my role perfectly. I signed documents without hesitation. I waived claims. I walked into court looking exhausted. Broken. At the hearing, Mark leaned toward me and whispered. You did the right thing. He thought he'd won. He didn't know what Rachel had already filed. Or what Luis had uncovered. He didn't know that the insurance companies had been alerted. Or that Dr. Mercer had documented everything off record. And he definitely didn't know that his assistant had started talking. When the judge asked if I understood what I was giving up, I said one sentence. Yes, Your Honor. Mark exhaled in relief. That's when his lawyer's smile faded. If you think you know where this is going, you don't. Because the real consequences didn't hit him in court. They hit him after the divorce was finalized at 10:42 a.m. No applause. No drama. Just the dull sound of a stamp hitting paper. Mark shook his lawyer's hand. Smiled at me once. A smile full of relief. Of certainty. He thought the danger was over. He was wrong. I moved out that same afternoon into a furnished one-bedroom Rachel had arranged under an LLC name. No forwarding address. No shared utilities. No traceable routines. For the first time in years, I slept without medication. And for the first time, Mark started calling. At first, it was polite. Hey. Just checking in. Making sure you're okay. I didn't answer. Then it turned irritated. You forgot some documents. We need to tie up loose ends. Still silence. By day 4, the messages shifted again. Concerned. Almost tender. You don't sound like yourself. I'm worried about you. I saved every voicemail. Luis called me that night. He's unraveling, he said. And when men like him unravel, they rush. Rush to what? I asked. To secure the payout. 2 days later, Mark filed a claim inquiry on the largest life insurance policy. Not a claim. An inquiry. Testing the system. Rachel had warned me. The moment he thinks you're out of reach, she'd said, he'll try to cash the future. What Mark didn't know was that the insurance companies were already watching him. Every call. Every email. Every IP address. Because 3 weeks earlier, Rachel had quietly sent them something. A sealed packet. Inside it. A handwriting analysis. A timeline of falsified medical authorizations. A sworn statement from Dr. Mercer. And one sentence highlighted in yellow. There is reason to believe the beneficiary may have contributed to the insured's medical destabilization. That sentence was poison. The next move came from someone I didn't expect. Elaine Parker. Mark's assistant. She contacted Luis from a burner phone. They met in a grocery store parking lot in Aurora. Cameras everywhere. Elaine didn't look like a villain. She looked tired. Pale. Hands trembling. I didn't know it would go this far, she said. Luis didn't interrupt. He told me you were sick, she continued. That you wanted him to handle things. That you trusted him. What things? Luis asked. Elaine swallowed. Your meds. Your records. The insurance paperwork. Did you know the dosages were being altered? Luis pressed. She nodded. Tears spilled over. He said it was temporary, she whispered. That it would make the transition easier. That you'd never feel it. Luis leaned back. And the timeline? Elaine's voice broke. He said by mid-October, it would all be over. Rachel listened to the recording twice. Then she closed her laptop. We don't go to the police yet, she said. Why not? I asked. Because criminal cases need airtight intent, she replied. And intent is best proven when the person thinks they're safe. So we wait? No, she said. We invite him to make one final move. Mark showed up at my old office unannounced. Security called me before letting him in. I'll handle it, I said. He looked surprised when he saw me. Not relieved. Surprised. You look better, he said slowly. Divorce does that, I replied. He studied my face, searching for weakness. 4 cracks. I need you to sign one last document, he said, pulling out a folder. It's about the house equity. Just a formality. I didn't touch it. Email it to my lawyer, I said. His jaw tightened. You don't trust me anymore? I met his eyes. No, I said calmly. I don't. For a split second, something ugly flashed across his face. Then it was gone. Okay, he said lightly. Just thought I'd ask. As he turned to leave, he added one sentence. Take care of yourself. The same sentence from the anonymous text months earlier. That was the confirmation I needed. That night, Rachel filed a motion to unseal evidence related to the divorce. Public record. The next morning, Mark's name was flagged. Banks froze his accounts pending review. Insurance companies suspended all beneficiary privileges. The state medical board opened an inquiry. At 3:17 p.m., Mark was pulled over on I-25. Not arrested. Questioned. Routine, they said. But his phone was taken. And on that phone were messages he had forgotten to delete. Messages about timing. About dosage. About keeping her calm. The police called Rachel that evening. They asked for everything. She gave them more. I testified 2 weeks later. Not in a courtroom. In a quiet federal building with beige walls and no windows. 3 investigators. 1 recorder. They asked me to describe my marriage. I told them the truth. The slow erosion. The control disguised as care. The way he made me doubt my own body. When they asked why I hadn't left sooner, I said. Because he made me believe I couldn't survive without him. 1 investigator nodded. That's consistent, he said. Mark was arrested on a Tuesday morning. Financial fraud. Insurance manipulation. Unauthorized medical interference. The charges kept coming. Elaine took a plea deal. She testified. So did Dr. Mercer. So did I. Mark's reputation collapsed in days. His firm put him on indefinite leave. Then terminated him. Friends disappeared. Family stopped calling. The man who once smiled in court now sat in a holding cell, staring at a wall. I didn't visit. I didn't need to. The sentencing hearing was months later. Mark avoided looking at me. When the judge read the charges, his shoulders sagged. When the sentence was announced, 8 years, he finally looked up. Confused. As if this wasn't the ending he'd planned. As he was led away, his lawyer wouldn't meet his eyes. Neither would he. If this story stunned you, take a second to like and subscribe. Because the final part isn't about what he lost. It's about what I gained. The day after Mark was sentenced, I woke up before sunrise. No panic. No racing heart. Just silence. For years, my mornings had started with dread, waiting to feel wrong before I even opened my eyes. That morning, my body felt like it belonged to me again. But peace didn't come all at once. It never does after control. The media picked up the story faster than Rachel expected. Local attorney charged an insurance scheme. Divorce hides alleged medical manipulation. They didn't use my name at first. I was the ex-wife. The vulnerable spouse. Rachel warned me. They'll try to make you a symbol. Or a cautionary tale. I didn't want either. But then something unexpected happened. Women started finding me. Emails at first. Long ones. Detailed. Shaking. One woman wrote, "My husband manages my meds too. I thought it was love." Another, "My doctor listens to him more than me. Is that normal?" I read every message. Some nights, I cried until my chest hurt, not from fear, but recognition. What Mark did wasn't rare. It was just invisible. Luis came by my apartment one evening with a bottle of cheap wine. "Congratulations," he said. "You survived." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "I don't feel like a winner," I said. He nodded. "That's because winning doesn't look like movies. It looks like paperwork. Therapy. And rebuilding routines." He wasn't wrong. I changed my phone number. Closed old accounts. Learned how to read my own medical charts. The first time a doctor asked me directly how I felt, and waited for the answer, I almost froze. Choice can feel overwhelming when you haven't had it in a long time. Rachel invited me to her office 2 weeks later. "There's one more thing," she said. She slid a document across the table. A civil suit. Wrongful endangerment. Emotional distress. Financial manipulation. "Do I have to?" I asked. "No," she said honestly. "But if you don't, he keeps the narrative that this was a misunderstanding. A mistake." I thought of the calendar entry. All resolved. "I'll do it," I said. The deposition was harder than the trial. No judge. No jury. Just Mark's new lawyer and a recorder. They asked about my childhood. My mental health history. My drinking habits. At one point, the lawyer leaned forward and asked, Isn't it possible you exaggerated your symptoms because you wanted attention during the divorce? I felt my hands curl into fists. Then I heard Rachel's voice in my head, slow. Precise. Don't give them emotion. No, I said calmly. What's possible is that you're asking that because women who speak clearly about harm are inconvenient. The room went quiet. Mark never testified. On his lawyer's advice, he settled. The amount was confidential, but it was enough. Enough to start over. Enough to fund therapy for a long time. Enough to remind him that control has a cost. When the settlement cleared, Rachel sent me one sentence. You're free. I moved cities. Not far. Just far enough. I took a job at a nonprofit that worked with victims of coercive control, not because I wanted to relive it, but because I could spot it. The signs. The language. The pauses before answers. I learned how to listen the way no one had listened to me. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear Mark's voice in my head. Everything's going to be over soon. But now it sounds small. Distant. Power fades when it's exposed. 6 months after the sentencing, I ran into Elaine. By accident. A coffee shop near the courthouse. She looked older. Smaller. She saw me and froze. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I really am. I studied her face. I believe you, I said. But believing you doesn't mean forgiving you. She nodded. I know. As she left, I realized something surprising. I didn't feel angry. I felt finished. That night, I opened the journal I'd kept during the marriage. Page after page of doubt. Of apologies for feelings I was allowed to have. On the last blank page, I wrote one sentence. I am not difficult. I was silenced. Then I closed it. For good. The world didn't clap when I healed. There was no music. No montage. Just quieter days. Steadier hands. A body that stopped bracing for impact. And one final truth I carry with me now. Justice doesn't always look like revenge. Sometimes it looks like walking away alive. With your mind intact. And your future untouched. The final part isn't about him at all. It's about what happens when a woman stops letting fear write her story. The first morning I truly felt free, I woke to the sound of rain tapping against my apartment window. No alarms. No messages. No calendar reminders about obligations I didn't want. Just the rain. I made coffee and sat at the small table by the window. Steam curling up from the mug. I watched the city wake slowly. People hurrying to jobs, oblivious to the chaos I had survived. I realized I could do the same, move through life without fear. It didn't feel heroic. It felt normal. Rachel called mid-morning. I have news, she said. Her voice was sharp, efficient. But there was an edge I hadn't heard before. Mark? I asked. Better, she said. Worse for him. Apparently, after the civil settlement, the insurance companies had reviewed all his past claims and uncovered irregularities in policies beyond mine. Multiple audits. Small payouts he hadn't disclosed. Fraudulent documents. And in each case, the trail led directly to him. He wasn't just facing criminal charges anymore. He was under full federal investigation for financial fraud, medical tampering, and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. The irony made me almost laugh. He had thought the divorce was his victory, that walking away with everything was the final move. He hadn't realized he'd left breadcrumbs. Every little manipulation, every falsified record, every transaction traced back to him. By the afternoon, Louise called with a more tangible update. They froze his accounts. Not just the obvious ones, he said. They flagged anything in his name or linked to him. Credit cards, retirement accounts, even personal loans he co-signed. Everything. And they're auditing everything he touched professionally for the past 5 years. I let the phone slip from my hand. I remembered sitting at our kitchen table 9 months ago, signing papers he insisted were formalities. Now, each line of ink he had thought harmless was a thread that unraveled him entirely. I didn't attend court for the new charges. I didn't want to watch the man who had nearly destroyed me squirm. But I kept tabs through public records. The day they read the first federal indictment, I watched the news on my small apartment TV. Denver attorney faces up to 20 years for conspiracy, fraud, and unlawful interference in patient care, the reporter said. Details remain sealed as the case develops, but investigators describe a complex web of deception targeting multiple individuals over several years. I took a sip of coffee. The bitter warmth hit my throat and I swallowed hard. I thought of the fear, the doubt, the sleepless nights. And I realized I hadn't felt fear in days. It wasn't just the legal system that turned on him. Word got out in his circles. Partners at his firm started distancing themselves. Clients withdrew. Colleagues whispered in hallways. Even his parents, people who had once adored him blindly, stopped returning calls. Mark's empire, carefully built over decades, was collapsing like sand through fingers. And yet, he had no idea it was happening until the walls were already falling. Rachel suggested one final step. It's time for him to face the truth in public, she said. We prepared a press conference. Not to humiliate him. Not to gloat. But to ensure that the record was clear. I was a survivor. He was accountable. The morning of the conference, I wore a simple black suit. Hair pulled back. No jewelry. No exaggeration. Just presence. The reporters asked questions, eager to provoke, to turn me into a victim. Did you ever fear for your life? One asked. Yes, I said. And I acted. That fear didn't control me. I did. Did you ever regret signing the divorce papers? Another asked. No, I said. Every signature, every waiver, every choice I made brought me here. Alive, intact, and free. Cameras clicked. Microphones recorded. Phones streamed. And I realized something. Truth, when spoken aloud, is a weapon stronger than fear. Mark didn't attend. By the time the media picked up our statements, he had already been taken into custody for questioning on the federal charges. I wasn't there to watch him fall. I didn't need to. I had built a new life. One that didn't revolve around his presence, his manipulations, or his control. The weeks that followed were quiet but powerful. I started therapy consistently. I reconnected with friends I hadn't spoken to in years. I traveled alone for the first time in my adult life, to the mountains, to the ocean, to places where I could hear myself think. And each step, small as it seemed, reinforced the most important truth. Family isn't blood. It's who chooses you. Mark's final arrest came 6 months after the press conference. 8 years? Possibly more, pending appeals and investigations. A man who once smiled in court, confident, certain of victory, now sat in a cell, facing a lifetime of consequences he couldn't manipulate his way out of. I wasn't there to gloat. I didn't need to be. I had my life back. And in the quiet, the rain still tapping on my window, I felt something I hadn't in a decade, peace. Months later, I met with a woman named Clara, a journalist who had followed the case. She wanted to write a story, a feature about survivors of coercive control and financial manipulation. I agreed, but I set terms. No sensationalism. No victim narrative. People need to see the system work, I said. They need to see that someone can walk away alive and still win. Clara nodded. She understood. The story was published. Hundreds of emails followed. Some thanking me. Some sharing their own stories. For the first time, I realized the impact of my choices went beyond me. One evening, I went for a walk in the park near my apartment. Leaves fell around me. The air was crisp. And I laughed, a full, unrestrained laugh. Not because I had beaten him. Not because the law had sided with me. Because I had chosen myself. And that, in the end, was victory. Mark's downfall became a cautionary tale. People in the legal community whispered about him for years. His former colleagues moved on. The clients he had manipulated sought restitution elsewhere. And I lived. I rebuilt. I thrived. Sometimes, I still think about the life I almost lost. But then I remember the quiet strength I found, the one no amount of manipulation, fear, or control could take from me. And I know the truth now. You don't have to fight to win. You just have to survive long enough to be free. If this story shocked you, hit like and subscribe. Because surviving is just the beginning, but it's the part that matters most. And finally, in the silence of my apartment, I whispered to myself. Family isn't blood. It's who chooses you. And I chose me. The rain fell outside. I smiled. And for the first time in my life, I felt untouchable.